Hello, and welcome to Don Hammond's Arlington Weekly News. I'm Daniel Pineda. Happy New Year. This is our first show for 2023. We have a great program for you this week. We have the news, CBB, and 55 Plus News. We also have local artists Kate Thompson Summit and Helen Joyce Burroughs. But first, a social media reminder. You can watch the Arlington Weekly News on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Arlington Weekly News and the number 1. Also on Facebook and WERA 96.7 FM. Now on to our first news story for this week. The Virginia Department of Health page provided the following data. For the Arlington District, as of December 27th, 2022, reported cases over all time, 61,848. This is 287 more all-time reported cases than last week's total of 61,561. As for vaccinations, the VDH site shows that 206,097 people over the age of 5 have received at least one dose of the COVID vaccine as of December 27th. That is an increase of 35 over the previous week's 206,062 vaccinations. Based on this data, more people are getting sick than are getting vaccinated. Visit vaccines.gov for appointments through pharmacies and other medical providers in and around Arlington County. Also, the Arlington Mill Community Center curative COVID-19 testing kiosk closed last December. You can find testing locations convenient to you by visiting VDH's test site locator. Get tested if you have symptoms of COVID-19 before large gatherings and after spending time in a crowd. Learn more about the county's COVID-19 response at arlingtonva.us/COVID-19. The county board approved an agreement to select Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, Inc. and EYA Developments to develop the infill parcels at Crystal House Apartments. The APAH/EYA team was selected through a competitive national scale developer selection process, and based on the strengths in its proposed costs, and experience delivering complex affordable housing projects in the county. This selection also took into consideration county goals and priorities, including the plan to create 655 affordable units across all Crystal House parcels. This agreement is the first in a series of project milestones that includes reaching future agreements with the Washington Housing Conservancy and the selected development team, including subdivision, parking sharing, easements, etc., with the requirements of delivering all affordable units by January 2028. In 2020, Amazon secured the land option on development rights for the undeveloped parcels at Crystal House Apartments when it helped the Washington Housing Conservancy acquire the property. In 2021, Amazon assigned the option to the county under an agreement to provide a minimum of 554 affordable residential units, of which a minimum of 148 would be for households earning 50% or less of the area median income. In case you're wondering, the 2021 area median household income was $128,145. So 50% would be $64,072.50. By comparison, the absolute maximum Social Security benefit is $50,328.
Christmas tree collection will take place through January 13th, 2023. Discarded trees should be placed at the curb no later than 6 o'clock a.m. on regular trash collection days. All decorations, nails, and stands must be removed, and trees should not be placed in plastic bags. Now, here is a reminder about snow in Arlington. First of all, it is worth noting that Arlington's snow removal trucks only plow Arlington streets when there is an accumulation of 2 inches or more. Plowing anything less would damage road surfaces and equipment. Also, Arlington snow operations involve multiple departments as well as external partners. A winter weather alert for snow, ice, or freezing rain sets crews in motion according to an established set of pretreatment and removal phases. Arlington follows Virginia's salt management strategy to minimize the effects of brine and salt on the region's watershed. Arlington also treats high-volume trails with the same priority and response time as primary arterial streets. For residents, the county's snow removal ordinance requires all property owners to clear snow and ice from public sidewalks adjacent to their property within 24 hours after the end of the storm for snowfalls of less than 6 inches or 36 hours for snowfalls greater than 6 inches. There are also other ways you can help. Coordinate with your neighbors to park cars on one side of the street where feasible, or avoid on-street parking on narrow roads so that plow operators can efficiently clear a wider span of roadway. Avoid parking head-in on cul-de-sacs to allow plows more room to maneuver. Clear sidewalks, fire hydrants, and storm drains, tossing snow toward buildings and not the street. However, wait for plows to come before clearing snow from the front of driveways to minimize the amount pushed back by plows. Stay home or use mass transit to reduce the number of potentially stranded vehicles. Apply only the recommended minimum of chemical de-icers on sidewalks and driveways. And finally, stay connected through the county's snow and ice page and the Environmental Services social media platforms for updates on snow phases, transportation, trash collection, and other important notifications. That's enough news for this week. Now it's time for Community Bulletin Board, or CBB.
Hi, and welcome to CBB. Our first CBB event is for adults. Ever wonder what nature looks like under a microscope? Sign up for this series and learn all about the tiny but mighty among us. The class will cover the basics of microbial physiology, interactions, and ecology. Each participant will receive their own foldable microscope. You only need to sign up once, and then the class will meet on the following Wednesdays, January 11th and 25th, and February 8th and 22nd. Registration is required, and the cost is $20. But hey, you get that microscope. You can register online at the Parks and Recreation website. For more information, call Rita Peralta at 703-228-6535. That first session is on Wednesday, January 11th from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. at Long Branch Nature Center, 625 South Carlin Springs Road. Our next event is also for adults. It's called Sweet, Sweet Sleep. Take a deep dive into a natural history topic that more than scratches just the surface. For some, sleeping is a favorite activity, from long sleeps to short cat naps. But how do other creatures sleep? How much sleep do they need? And is their sleep as deep as ours? Here's a chance to explore the world of sleep in other creatures and discover the fantastic ways they doze. Registration is required. For more information, call Ken Rosenthal at 703-228-3403. That's on Wednesday, January 11th from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. This is a virtual event. Our next event is called Fiber and Quilt Textile Creations, featuring works by local artists Kay Thompson Summit and Helen Joyce Burroughs. They'll be appearing later on in this show, but for now, the event begins on January 17th and runs through February 23rd at the Textile Gallery, 6819 Elm Street in McLean, Virginia. Our next event is for kids aged 6 to 12. It's called Cold-Blooded Afternoons, Snakes. When you stop to think about it, snakes are really amazing predators. They capture their food without having any legs. Discover how different snakes catch and eat their prey. You'll meet a live snake up close and watch it eat. Registration is required. For more information, call Hallie Johnson at 703-228-3403. That's on Thursday, January 12th from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. at Gulf Branch Nature Center, 3608 North Military Road. Our final CBB event is for families. It's called Outer Space Campfire. The whole family is invited to join in at the Gulf Branch Nature Center for lots of old-fashioned fun. This engaging program will be filled with entertaining activities which may include stories, special animal guests, games, songs, and, you guessed it, s'mores. Staff will provide the marshmallows, chocolate, and graham crackers at a cost of $5. Registration is required. You can register online at the Parks and Recreation website. For more information, call Hallie Johnson at 703-228-3403. That's on Saturday, January 14th from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. at Gulf Branch Nature Center, 3608 North Military Road. Now it's time for 55 Plus News.
Howdy, and welcome to 55 Plus News. Our first event is another 55 Plus walk. Stay active with friendly walking companions. You will explore nearby trails and neighborhoods in a safe, socially distant manner. Destinations may be changed or excursions canceled for inclement weather. You can register online at the Parks and Recreation website. You will need to get the exact meetup location, but this one's listed as Arlington Ridge North Loop. The activity number is 912-106-06, and that's on Wednesday, January 11th from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. You gotta be 55 and up, and 55 Plus membership is required. Our next event is called Papers, Save or Shred. Many of us are overwhelmed with all the information kept in our heads, phones, file cabinets, and in safe deposit boxes. Kay Bransford, President and Chief Curator of Memory Bank, will explain how to manage, prioritize, organize, and save or shred the paper files in our lives. You can register online at the Parks and Recreation website. The activity number is 912-404-01, and that's on Wednesday, January 11th from 11 o'clock a.m. to 12 o'clock p.m. You gotta be 55 and up, and 55 Plus membership is required. This is a virtual event. Our next event honors the I Have a Dream speech. Almost 60 years later, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech is still one of the greatest speeches in U.S. history. Retired George Mason University communications professor Don Boileau analyzes what makes this speech so inspiring and so powerful. You can register online at the Parks and Recreation website. The activity number is 912-899-03. And that's on Thursday, January 12th from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. You gotta be 55 and up, and 55 plus membership is required. This is a virtual event. Our next event is called Bunko Bunch. Call in all 55 plus friends who want to play a fun game in a social environment. Bunko is a dice game of luck where having a good time is the number one objective. Bunko is also a great way to socialize with new and old friends. No prior experience is needed. You can register online at the Parks and Recreation website. The activity number is 912-600-07, and that's on Friday, January 13th from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. at Walter Reed Community Center, 2909 16th Street South. You gotta be 55 and up, and 55 plus membership is required. Our final event is called Rock Music Legends New Year's Soul. Start the new year off right with some of your favorite soul-stirring songs by the all-time greats Sam Cooke, Otis Redding, and The Temptations. 55 plus volunteer and musician Carl Gold will discuss and play examples of this moving and revitalizing music. The presenter will be appearing on screen via Zoom at the center, or you can watch the live broadcast at home. Just sign up based on your preference. You can register online at the Parks and Recreation website. The activity number for the live version is 912-400-40. That's on Tuesday, January 17th from 1:30 to 2:45 p.m. at Lubber Run Community Center, 300 North Park Drive. You gotta be 55 and up, and 55 plus membership is required. Now, for the virtual version, just use activity number 912-400-41. Anyway, that's all I got for 55 plus news.
And as promised, here is the interview with Kay Thompson Summit and Helen Joyce Burroughs.
Hi, I'm Helen Joyce Burroughs, and we're here today to talk about our upcoming textile exhibition in McLean, Virginia in January. Kay and I have traveled the world together for 30 years, representing American technology and products, and now we are sharing a new adventure, and that is our artwork. I am a painter, and I'm now doing adding textiles in various forms to my artwork, and I will let Kay tell you about what she's doing.
I started out many years ago as a traditional quilter, doing pieced quilting. I inherited my maternal grandmother's quilts, and that inspired me to take a class in quilting. When I became pregnant with my daughter, I wanted to make her a quilt, and so I took the class, and from then on I was hooked on it. It's an amazing way that one can express feelings, memories, all sorts of things that are very precious to our lives, and I love doing it.
I thought I would tell you a little bit about my experiment with art. I started out doing silk ribbon embroidery. I went to a class in New Mexico and in France to study silk ribbon embroidery. And after a while, I decided I really wanted to do my own designs. So I took up painting, and I went from oil pastel to acrylic to oil, all of the mediums which I enjoyed, and they each have their own advantage. Now I have come back full circle, combining my silk ribbon embroidery with my acrylics. And this is one example that I would like to show you how I have combined the acrylics with the silk ribbon. And these are, individual techniques, different ribbons, different forms of primarily silk. And this one also is all silk. This is a larger form of ribbon in terms of developing the design. These are both on unprimed canvas painted with acrylic, and then the design is enhanced with silk. Then I started experimenting, making my own wool, and this is done with wool roving with a wet rolling technique, where the design is embedded in the wool as you create the substrate. And then I did other forms of wool and then embellished it into the design of the substrate. So I have done the acrylic with the silk ribbon embroidery, and then I have done the techniques with the wet felting, embedding it into the design, and adding embellishment to the wet felting. And now I am doing a dry felting technique with a binder, and you can see that I have actually made the design with different forms of wool roving. I've used silk hankies and silk lash all over to make this design. And the thing that I do enjoy about the dry wool technique that I have developed is there's a much fluffier and more depth to the piece. Although I love the embellishment, but this, I think, suits itself more to landscape designs. And those are the techniques that I am working with at the moment. In my show that's coming up in January, I will have 37 pieces that I have developed. And I've had a great deal of fun doing it. I'm a meditator, and all of these different techniques that I've been using are almost a form of meditation for me. So I hope that you'll come to the show and enjoy all the different techniques, and I'd love to hear your comments on them and look forward to meeting you. Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, I started out as a traditional quilter, inspired by my mother's love of hand needlework and inheriting my maternal grandmother's quilts. I have about 8 of them, and I treasure them. But as an artist, you have to grow. And I graduated from traditional piece quilts into applique quilts. In the beginning, I used other people's patterns. And I have an example of that, which I will show you. As I mentioned, I evolved from a piecer into an appliquer. Primarily, I like to do hand needle turn applique. I started out using other people's patterns, and this is a good example. The everything is hand appliqué, but it's not my pattern. And after a while, for an artist, I think that becomes less satisfying. So I began to look for inspiration in other places. And one of my very favorite techniques is making a pattern from a photograph. I will have 4 quilts in the exhibit that are done that way, and I would like to point out the one that's directly behind me here. This quilt is called Friendship. It's 2 different species meeting on the beach of a morning, discussing the weather, where to find the best food. I just love this quilt, and the pattern comes from a photograph that my daughter took in Bradenton Beach in Florida. And I have used that technique for other quilts. This is another example. I have a very good friend who is a painter, and she gave me one of her paintings with the idea that we would experiment to see if you could create a scene using fabric that would inspire the same feelings and emotions that a painting of the same scene inspires. And I think we were very successful in doing that. A lot depends on the fabric manufacturers, because with fabric you can't do all the subtle things that you can do with paint, and so this is a technique I really love. This is another example of that. This is an example of trying to use different techniques in a quilt. You can see here that there is embroidery with the spider. There are little animals everywhere, and a crow. It makes the scene come alive. It tells a story, and basically I like to make story quilts. This one is a different technique. It's an experiment in trying to use one pattern, in this case the cat, and make the cat different in every scene by simply manipulating the templates that you use. There's a lot of embroidery in this. You can see the embroidery in the eye there in the center. There's a lot of beading and embellishments are added just to make it kind of fun. And actually I think it's successful in presenting cats as something people can relate to, because my grandchildren have identified cats here that they believe portray what their cat is like.
Well, it's been fun talking to you today, and I hope that you've enjoyed some of the techniques that I'm starting to experiment with, and that I hope that you will join us at the show in January at the McLean Textile Gallery. Thank you.
I've enjoyed being interviewed. Thank you very much for your interest in my art, and hopefully you'll be at our exhibit.
The event is Fiber and Quilt Textile Creations by Kay Thompson Summit and Helen Joyce Burroughs at the Textile Gallery, 6819 Elm Street, McLean, Virginia, on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from 11 o'clock a.m. to 4 o'clock p.m., January 17th through February 23rd, 2023, with a reception on Sunday, January 22nd, 2023, from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. RSVP at 703-534-7027.
And that concludes our program for this week. We will be back next week with more news from Arlington. Meanwhile, be careful, be safe, and be well.